with me? Luke chapter 5, verse 1. One day as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him, listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats, left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little bit from shore. Then he sat down and he taught the people from the boat. When he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put into deep water, let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night, haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, for I'm a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they'd taken. So were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. And Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on shore. They left everything, and they followed him. And this is the word of God, the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You know, I have never believed in a long, extended, focused altar call at a worship service. Mostly because it plays on people's emotions and it doesn't normally result in that much of an impactful change. But I also never really heard Jesus give one. You know, at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, he didn't say, "Okay, guys, let's have one more praise chorus. I know someone out there is under conviction to come and give their life to me." You know, it wasn't like that. Actually, Jesus rarely encouraged anyone to follow him. You know, he did say, "Come to me, my yoke is easy, my burden's light." And he did encourage people to make changes in their life, to be more acceptable to God. But he usually made the demands more restrictive. And I think about the story of the rich young ruler. You know, this individual who came and been faithful, and he asked what he had to do, and Jesus said, "You got to do this." And he said, "Well, I've done all that. I've checked it all off." And Jesus said, "Well, there's one more thing to do." And with Jesus, there's always one more thing to do, right? There's always something else we can do. There's always a higher level to our devotion. So while he did tell people to straighten up their lives, he never really encouraged anyone to follow him, other than the disciples. Which means he was out for disciples, not members. And so that's why the calling of the disciples has always fascinated me. I mean, not merely so much that they would just drop their nets and leave their families and their business and immediately follow Jesus, but the fact that it all seemed so random. It was like a chance encounter. It was very early in Jesus' ministry, in the Gospels, right after his baptism and his temptation. But his popularity was really exploding. And at the time, you know, he was a solo act. He was just going around, a lone preacher, walking around, teaching to the crowds, and the crowds continually grew and continually pressed in. It was so intense that the wording actually, it's like it's smothering Jesus, so much so that he can't continue to preach. That the crowds are just too intense, and he needs an escape. And then he just happens, you know, to see a boat. And so he sets sail and he baptizes that boat into a floating pulpit and he continues the message there. And he preaches. And I've always wondered what he was preaching. What was he teaching there from the boat? And it obviously wasn't important to the gospel writers because nobody says what Jesus is teaching. It amazes me they didn't record it. You know, what was Jesus saying? Oh, just some stuff about God and the universe and the meaning of life and why the sky's blue. You know, but obviously it wasn't important. Now, I think if Jesus said anything, I would write it down. But it wasn't important to them because the message is the focus of this story. It's the calling. And so after the message, whatever it was, Jesus decides it's time to do some fishing. And he tells them to cast the nets, and we know the story. And it's almost comical when you think about it. A trained carpenter, an itinerant preacher, trying to tell these seasoned fishermen how to do their job. Yeah, right, preacher man. Been there, done that. We've been doing this all night. The fish just aren't biting. We know when it's time to fish and when it's time to cut bait. It's a complete washout. But against their better judgment and against common sense and against their best instincts, they obey and their bounty overflows. It's more than the men, their nets, and even their boats can handle. And then the action takes a turn. Peter completely forgets about the abundance of fish and even the sinking boat. And he throws himself down before Jesus. And he prostrates himself. And he asks Jesus to leave. Does that catch anybody off guard? He asks Jesus to leave. Like Isaiah in the presence of the divine. When you have that epiphany, you kind of realize your own status. You're a sinner. And so he has this epiphany. This fishing preacher is a powerful man of God. He got a glimpse of God. And I'm truly convinced after years and years of study and worship, all we ever get are glimpses, but sometimes those glimpses are intense, aren't they? And he had that intense glimpse of God, and he throws himself down on the boat. Because even those small glimpses let us see ourselves for who we are. When you truly see God for who God is, you see yourself for who you are. Not the mask that you show everybody else, not how, because people are easily fooled, but who you are in the presence of God. It's dangerous. Dangerous to be a sinner in the presence of a holy God. And he knew that he was with a holy man, and he didn't want any of that. And first of all, Jesus comforts him by saying, "Fear not." Same words of Jesus that end the Bible in Revelation. Fear not, don't be afraid. Yeah, I know you. You're Peter. Yeah, mediocre fisher. Little too outspoken, sometimes too hot-headed for your own good. I know you. I know you, and I've come for you. And he reassures Peter that, yeah, he represents God, but he hasn't come in judgment. He's come in grace. He's not come for condemnation. He's come for salvation. But then after salvation always comes the calling. And that act of provision becomes a proposition. And that catch becomes a calling. Not only do I know you, I plan to use you. And this is the point of the story. This is the point of the miracle. And this is why it's so much more important than the message. The point is, if Jesus knows where all the fish are and what the fishermen can't even find, he knows who the fishermen are as well. And now I will make you a fisher of men. From now on, we're going to be trying to catch people. And again, I have to ask, why Peter? Is this the best that Israel had to offer? Why didn't he recruit at the temple or at the school of rabbis? Get a good trained scholar. I mean, that's what we do. And we're looking for a leader. The seminary bulletin board's posted with job positions all the time. That's the only ones willing to settle for a student minister. There's others that, they got to have the MDiv or the DR or whatever. But not Jesus. So what was it about Peter? In him he saw a tool he could use. And it wasn't his intellect. It wasn't his skill set. It was his attitude. It was his piety. And it was his humility. And his openness to the leading and the presence of God. One person said that humility is the elevator to spiritual greatness. That's how we rise in the eyes of God. It's a dichotomy. Humbling yourself brings you higher. Because only then do you really see God. Only then can you really rely upon God. And the Gospels call Peter a fisherman, but I really question that. Because every time Jesus sees him fishing, he ain't catching, is he? No. You can call yourself a fisherman all you want, but if the freezer's empty, that's just talk. The only time Peter was successful in fishing is when he listens to Jesus. Both here and in the post-resurrection incident in the Gospel of John. He's not catching any fish until Jesus tells him where to cast the nets. Humility and dependence on God. God reliance instead of self-reliance. And maybe if that is the key to being spiritually great, that's why there are so few that are spiritually great. This attitude of humility is what awards Peter his calling. Understanding your own inadequacies. That's why Paul would write, consider your own calling. Not many of you were wise by human standards, but God chose the weak and the insignificant, that none could boast of their wisdom. Living proof, Exhibit A, that God can use the foolish of the world to thwart the wise. That's why we have that saying, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. It's the task itself that makes you qualified. Everyone will tell you, you learn more by teaching a Sunday school class than you ever do by attending one. You lead sometimes, you learn more sometimes more by leading worship than you ever do by attending a worship service. It's the task that makes you qualified, not the qualifications that give you the task. But Jesus chose Peter, I think, for another reason. Not only his humility, not only his obedience to the call, but also because of the mission. The calling to fish for men. His target audience. His target audience is sinner. And if you go on fishing, you need bait, don't you, Sabrina?
Yeah.
And you got to have the right bait.
Amen.
Right? How do you catch sinners? You don't use pompous, pious, religious elite. You use people embedded in the dirt of life. People familiar with the challenges and the struggle. Not the religious elite, but sinners themselves. You know, there's an entire world, and we're living in a society that's out there fishing. They are fishing for meaning. They are fishing for purpose. They are fishing for hope, and they need someone to show them where their abundance is. They need someone to show them where that great catch can be attained. And they're more likely to hear it from someone who's been there themselves. One person said, it's only sinners who know they are in need of salvation who are worthy to share that salvation with others. This would be Peter's last day of casting nets in the lake, for a little while anyway. He would leave everything to follow Jesus. He would leave everything to serve God. He would leave everything to fish for those in need. He obeyed that initial call, even when it went against his best judgment. And now he's going to obey that continued call to fish for people, even when it doesn't make sense, even when he feels unqualified. That's the way the call of God is. He had nothing to offer but his own humility and an awesome sense of the divine. But that's all it takes. Realizing your own lack of worth is what truly makes you worthy in the kingdom of God. So when you think, why not me? Or when you think, why me? You should be thinking, why not me? God's called us all to drop it all and follow, because he's got a task. There's a world of fish out there ready to be caught. Are we willing to commit ourselves to that task? Let's turn to our hymn of invitation, 601. I am thine, O Lord. And we will close again with an invitation for all to accept the call of God in their lives. Express that acceptance in whatever manner it might be with us as we close. We'll just sing the first verse and extend the invitation to all. I am thine, O Lord, 601, verse number 1.